Everybody. I'm Joe Van Doren. I'm the founder of Name My Virtues. And what I do is I help parents and teachers bring out the best in their children and in their students. And I do this by inspiring the practice of virtues in everyday life and really recognizing the virtues that we have inside of ourselves as well as all of those virtues in others. And so the other day, I did a virtues pick, and the pick was on the virtue of forgiveness. And as I was thinking about forgiveness, I was thinking about how uh, strong of a virtue that was in helping me to overcome some pretty serious things. I was a young person who really dealt with a lot of anger issues. And, it's so funny because when you're in the middle of that, you don't even think that you have anger issues. It's everybody else's fault. Well, they did this to me, they did that to me. That's so unjust. I've got to fix it. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go through your head. I remember one time I was in a, a company automobile. This was when I was very young, but I had this great job, and they gave me a car, 1973 Impala, and the big beast. And I was on a highway right here in Maryland, and going up the road, and this guy came by, and he cut someone else off. Let's just make this very clear. He did not do anything to me. But when I saw him cut this person off, I was so angry that I chased him up the road. I chased him at 100 miles an hour. Now, if you can imagine this, going up the parkway at 100 miles an hour, weaving in and out of traffic, all because this guy did something to somebody else. It's just, as I look back on that, it was just like, I don't even believe I did that. But, I was in my early 20s, and I was a very, very angry young man. So I guess this one is about how did I get past that, and what does forgiveness have to do with that? So you need to know a little bit of my history, and that my father passed away when I was 13 or 14 years old. I guess I was 14. I always think of myself as being 13, but I think I was really 14 years old when he died. I guess I could do the math and figure that out, but nonetheless, um, and those 13, 14 years were not super awesome. There was very little money in the house, and my father had this. He called me a lot of names. Let's just put it that way. And so it was, I really went through a lot with him. And even though he was bedridden for the last 7 years of his life, um, he made it very clear that he was in charge. And I mean, forcing me to come to him so he could slap me, that kind of things. And so, nonetheless, there was always the fear that I was going to be the one that was going to make him die. I mean, that was something that my mother used on me quite a bit. And as time came along, and as I got older, I began to realize that this anger thing was really a problem. But the way it got fixed and the how was just amazing. Um, was actually seeing a social worker to see what I could do to help my kids because they were going through some things. And at one of the sessions, he helped me to realize that I had not forgiven my father. And in that process of some visualization and some other techniques that he was using that were just phenomenal, he helped me to realize that the real reason that my father acted the way that he did was not because he wanted to be mean, but it was because of his own fears. His fear of not being there to help me grow up, his fear of not being able to teach me certain things, his fear of feeling maybe like he had failed as a parent or for whatever reason it might have been. When I got to the point where I realized that it was his love for me and his fear of not being there for me, that is when I began the process of being able to forgive and to begin the process of recognizing that it was just simply his lack of skills and his lack of knowledge and his lack of being able to overcome this fear that he had of not being able to be the father that I am going to assume that he wanted to be, even though, the skill set wasn't quite there. So what did it do? Well, it really forced me into a place of choice. I had to choose whether I was going to continue to live my life in a very angry manner, having a deep effect on not only myself and my own health, but also on all of those people around me and my relationships and those individuals that just saw me as an angry person. And all I would have to do is just raise my eyebrows and people would, back off because they were just afraid. That's not who I wanted to be. It's just not who I wanted to be. When I was able to forgive him, when I was able to say, I think I understand what was bothering him the very most, then and only then was I able to forgive and to begin healing myself. And it was at that time and this was in my early 30s, that I began to study the subject of peace, that I began to study the subject of anger and anger management. And so for the last 35 years, that's been my story. So forgiveness is a big thing. And I encourage anyone who's had any of those kind of experiences or trauma in your life to get the help that you need, to get someone to help you, and to begin and really to take into account, I wonder what the other person was feeling. I wonder what it was that they were going through. Look at it from their side, and forgiveness becomes a lot easier. So I hope that tells a little bit of a story about me and why I do what I do today, because I really want to see children grow up safe and healthy, successful and happy, just as much as every parent does. So until next time, and our next word that comes up is really strong for me. We'll see you again. Bye.